The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
He knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody. And he never had a problem until right after he left.
Two of the world's most powerful men now in a very public feud. The constant back and forth playing out online and how the ripples could impact you. Plus, the suspect in the anti-Semitic attack in Boulder back in court. The slew of charges he now faces as his family's deportation status hangs in limbo. And
it's the American dream that's at stake. An Ivy League degree has enormous potential to increase a student's earning potentials, and it's unfair that these aren't being allocated fairly.
Our exclusive interview with the Brown University student who sent out Doge-like emails to campus staff. His testimony before Congress. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We are so glad you're here with us. I'm Dee Gatton, and on this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week, and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with the four big stories we've been following this week. The suspect in the Colorado anti-Semitic attack charged. President Trump issuing a travel ban on more than a dozen countries. The auto pen controversy surrounding the Biden administration intensifies, and two Chinese nationals were caught smuggling a bioweapon into the U.S. But first, the big, beautiful bill now causing a big, very public breakup to the White House, where the president is going back and forth with his once right-hand man. Elon Musk, formerly tasked with slashing federal spending, now taking swipes at the president over his budget plan. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joining us now to break it all down.
Not that long ago, President Donald Trump and Elon Musk were thick as thieves. Musk often stayed overnight here at the White House as he worked on Doge. Musk has since concluded his time as a special government employee and appeared to leave on good terms. That relationship, though, has turned publicly chilly as Musk slams Donald Trump's signature piece of legislation, the big, beautiful bill.
Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore.
We were in the Oval Office Thursday as President Trump told reporters he was very disappointed in Elon.
I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here. Better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden, he had a problem.
Elon Musk responded in real time, calling the president's statements false and saying the bill was never shown to him once, doubling down on his disdain for the legislation, which he has called a disgusting abomination that would bankrupt America, that does nowhere near enough to cut government spending. The president, though, suggesting this is all due to Musk being the CEO of Tesla, and the bill cuts incentives to buy EVs, which would be bad for Musk's business.
When that was cut, and Congress wanted to cut it, he became a little bit different, and I can understand that, but he knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody, and he never had a problem until right after he left.
Musk dismissing the comments, again responding in real time, writing on X, keep the EV solar incentives cuts in the bill. Also cut all the crazy spending increases in the big, ugly bill so that America doesn't go bankrupt. Trump responding later on Truth Social, saying the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. President Trump also wrote on Truth Social that Elon Musk was wearing thin, and he asked him to leave. Dee, back to you.
We're taking a look at how Elon Musk and President Trump's relationship got to this point. Last Friday, Musk arrived at the White House on his last day as a special government employee with a black eye, as you can see here in the picture. Musk said his 5-year-old son gave it to him as they were horsing around, but the puffy eye socket added to the odd moment in the Oval Office. Trump still presented the billionaire with a golden key for his Doge work. Then on Tuesday, Musk called Trump's legacy legislation, the big, beautiful bill, a disgusting abomination over its impact to the nation's sky-high deficit. And that same day, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt acknowledged Musk's stance and then tried to downplay the conflict, but it was already clear tensions were simmering. New information on the man accused of carrying out an anti-Semitic attack in Boulder, Colorado, now facing multiple charges. Mohammed Solomon facing nearly 120 charges, including 28 counts of attempted murder. The slew of new charges come as the FBI says the number of victims in Sunday's firebombing of a Jewish event has risen to 15. 8 women and 7 men were injured, ranging in age from 25 to 88 years old. Disturbing new video shows how Solomon used Molotov cocktails to set people on fire. A warning, some may find this hard to watch. Police say this cell phone video shows Solomon hurling bottles at people as they run for their lives. Solomon has also been charged with a federal hate crime and appeared in federal court on Friday. Solomon's status as an illegal immigrant in the country on an expired visa has drawn comparisons from the Trump administration to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Investigations following the attacks determined several of the terrorists entered the U.S. legally and continued living in the country on expired visas. A 2012 Homeland Security Committee meeting acknowledged the threat at the time, with its chairwoman Candace Miller stating in part, for terrorists, travel documents are as important as weapons. This week, border czar Tom Homan cited the recent Colorado attack, saying he's convinced another 9/11 style attack is coming due to President Biden's border policies. A new travel ban from the Trump administration is set to take effect this Monday and is much broader than a similar policy from his first term. National correspondent Matt Gelka has the details from Washington.
We don't want them.
The Trump administration's latest travel ban goes further than the controversial 2017 policy from his first term. Travelers from 12 countries, mostly from the Middle East and Africa, are now blocked from entering the United States. It includes citizens of countries including Afghanistan, Iran, and Yemen. 7 more countries, including Cuba and Venezuela, will have travel restrictions placed on their citizens.
We want to keep bad people out of our country. The Biden administration allowed some horrendous people, and we're getting them out one by one, and we're not stopping until we get them out.
The president tied the Boulder, Colorado terror suspect to the new ban as he mentioned the potential dangers of people overstaying their visas. The suspect is an Egyptian national who Homeland Security says overstayed a visa, but Egypt is not included on the ban list.
Egypt has been a country that we deal with very closely. They have things under control. The countries that we have don't have things under control.
Travel bans from Trump's first term targeted 7 Muslim-majority countries, and they were reversed while President Joe Biden was in office. Prior to that, the 7 countries were labeled countries of concern in the Obama administration, and travelers had limited visa restrictions placed on them. Democrats say the latest attempt at a larger ban will likely be headed for the courts.
There's no rhyme or reason as how we pick to choose all those countries. It's just deplorable. I think it's unconstitutional.
The travel ban could have a big impact on major soccer tournaments coming to the U.S., including the World Cup next year. Iran has already qualified for it. The executive order has an exemption for athletes, allowing them to compete and travel, but fans from banned countries cannot. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
One of the Chinese researchers charged with smuggling fungus into the U.S. will remain in custody until her case resumes next week. The judge ruled her detention hearing would be adjourned to allow time for her new attorney to get up to speed. She and another Chinese researcher were charged with smuggling a biological pathogen they plan to study at a University of Michigan lab last summer. The fungus is described as a potential agro-terrorism weapon that can cause disease in certain crops and can cause harm to livestock and people. Alex Shea, the Brown University student who sent a Doge-like email to thousands of non-faculty employees, testified before Congress Wednesday. Lawmakers holding the hearing to discuss elite universities inflating the cost of higher education. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, spoke with Shea exclusively after testifying.
Shea says the entire journey from sending that email back in March to fighting disciplinary charges by the university and now testifying before Congress has been a wild 3 months. But he's glad this topic is generating national attention.
An Ivy League degree has enormous potential to increase a student's earning potentials, and it's unfair that these aren't being allocated fairly.
Brown University rising junior Alex Shea testifying before Congress Wednesday during a hearing on alleged antitrust violations and tuition price fixing among Ivy League schools.
This committee has a responsibility not just to investigate Ivy League antitrust violations, but to reclaim the American dream.
Shea has been in the national spotlight since sending that email questioning administrators' roles. Congressional Republicans like Texas Rep. Troy Nehls, who showed up at the hearing Wednesday, coming to his defense, writing a letter to Brown after the university filed disciplinary charges. What was your reaction to his support coming and also speaking to you and testifying today?
And I'm grateful for his support and for raising awareness of this issue more broadly, that administrative bloat is pricing students out of the American dream.
While GOP members applauded Shea's efforts, Democrats criticized their counterparts for supporting President Trump's major domestic policy bill, which would make federal financial aid less available.
Working people do not have a fair shot at higher education. I think that is why we have been so vocal today about the cuts to the Pell Grant program.
Shea, however, urged the committee to investigate further, even calling on lawmakers to subpoena Brown President Christina Paxson.
To really get to the bottom of why Brown is charging students $93,000 a year for 1 year of college.
Now, Shea was cleared of the disciplinary charges by Brown last month and tells us he does plan to attend the university this fall. Now, you can watch the full interview on our YouTube channel. Just search The National Desk. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Coming up next year, President Trump continues his crusade against the Fed chair, the new numbers that spurred his latest attack. Plus,
I think that there are valid reasons to be concerned about.
auto pen allegations escalate. A former principal deputy assistant attorney general talks with us about the probe into Biden's health during his time in office. President Trump blasting Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell this week on his Truth Social platform. Trump hit the Fed chief for what Trump says is acting too slow on interest rates. The post came minutes after an ADP report this week showed private payrolls ticked up by just 37,000 in May. Trump writing in part, too late. Powell must lower the rate. He is unbelievable. The new number is far below the Dow Jones forecast for 110,000. And new developments, a Michigan man's plot to massacre Jewish children has been foiled, according to federal prosecutors. They say Hassan Chokor drove to a Jewish daycare and shouted anti-Semitic slurs and threats. Chokor then attempted to illegally purchase assault weapons. Authorities believe the 2022 incident was part of a larger plot to carry out his threats. He now faces up to 10 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. On Capitol Hill, the Federal Aviation Administration is asking lawmakers for $97 million to support air traffic controllers amid its broader funding request.
We're looking for a real investment in this, and I believe it is a true investment in the U.S. and the future.
Chris Rushlow's request for fiscal year 2026 would help train up to 2,500 new controllers. Shortages and overstressed workers are in focus after several close calls at American airports compounded by antiquated equipment. In total, the FAA is requesting $22 billion for fiscal year 26. The agency is undergoing a broad modernization effort. It needs to update facilities, equipment, telecommunications radar, and cybersecurity. New information, some economists are starting to question the accuracy of recent U.S. inflation data. The Wall Street Journal reporting the Bureau of Labor Statistics told economists this week a hiring freeze was forcing cutbacks on the inflation survey. The Journal adding that April's government inflation report used a less precise method for estimating price changes. The Bureau says these procedures will remain in place until the hiring freeze is lifted. To the auto pen controversy, the investigation into the alleged cover-up of former President Joe Biden is widening. Several former staffers being asked to appear before the House Oversight Committee. Earlier this week, I sat down with Thomas Dupree, the former Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush. Since auto pen use is legal, I'm curious how much of this is proving where Biden's mental state was when he was actually signing these pardons versus who knew.
Right. Look, I think that there are valid reasons to be concerned about the president's mental acuity during his final period in office. At the same time, I'm not sure the auto pen controversy casts a whole lot of light on this. The fact is most presidents, all presidents, sign a lot of things with auto pens. And so the fact that Biden may have signed pardons or other documents using the auto pen by itself doesn't really tell you a lot. I think what's going to be more interesting is hearing directly from the people who are in close contact with the president throughout his final year in office, really to find out what they knew and when they knew it.
Exactly. And the fact that there are more people that the committee is asking to speak with, I'm sure that more will come to light. I want to switch gears to the Colorado attack, has some late developments there. Visa overstaying was thrust into the national spotlight in light of all of this. From a national security standpoint, in your opinion, how big of a problem is this, and why is it so challenging to keep track of this subset of people? And I know something that you're very familiar with, some of the 9/11 hijackers, they overstayed their visas. So this isn't a new issue.
Right. It's not a new issue, and it's a serious issue. As you point out, some of the individuals who attacked us on 9/11 were themselves visa overstays. So it is something that the U.S. government has been wrestling with for a long time. I think one reason why it's been particularly tough for us to keep tabs on individuals who overstay their visas is because once their departure period expires, it can be hard to track them down. It's not as though they're always leaving a forwarding address or telling the government where they can be found and located. So you have a situation where we granted individuals the right to come to this country for a limited period of time. But if they don't leave on their scheduled departure date, it's anyone's guess where they could be in the country. Fair to say the government hasn't always prioritized finding individuals who are overstaying their visas and removing them, although that may be changing. But it is a long-standing problem that really has vexed the government for a long time now.
Thomas Dupree, Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
President Trump has directed Attorney General Pam Bondi to review all actions taken by President Biden during his time in office. Trump says he wants Bondi and White House lawyers to take a closer look at policy documents that were signed using an auto pen. The memo also calls for an investigation into whether Biden's team covered up any health issues. The fact-check team's Janae Bowens is back to discuss. So how is Biden responding to all of this, first of all?
Yeah, Dee Dee. So in a statement, former President Biden called this a distraction. He says he personally made every decision during his administration, and his advisors deny any effort to hide his health from the public.
So Biden granted more acts of clemency than any other president, but Republicans say some might be invalid. Break down their case, of course, surrounding the auto pen controversy.
Right. So back in March, Trump claimed that Biden's preemptive pardons, including those for members of the January 6th committee, were signed with an auto pen, so they're void, have no further force, because Trump says Biden didn't sign them himself or even know about them. But a 2005 Justice Department memo says it is legal for a president to use an auto pen. Now, Republicans want to know whether Biden knew it was being used in these cases.
Of course, and who may have known about his mental state at the time is being investigated. Janae, thank you. Janae, we'll be back in a few minutes to discuss the controversy surrounding Trump's own pardons. Coming up, the unique way Utah is trying to prevent teachers from leaving because of housing costs. We'll be right back. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Florida, where a couple saw an unexpected guest in their private pool.
It was supposed to be just another peaceful Saturday morning, filled with sunshine and coffee for Jim Voorhees and his wife Karen. But that took a splashing turn when they came face to face with an uninvited guest at their Pinecrest Lakes home. It all started around 8 in the morning when Jim says he heard a strange noise in his backyard. He took a look and didn't see anything. But around 11 a.m., it was a different story.
We saw something in the pool. I thought it was one of the big palm fronds. Sometimes they break off and blow in the pool. Took a little closer look, and it was an alligator.
Voorhees immediately called the Martin County Sheriff's Office, who called in a gator trapper. But Mr. Gator wasn't going out without a fight, twisting, turning, playing tug of war, and putting up a tense tussle with trappers. In the end, the snappy reptile was wrangled and removed.
A moment of celebration. Now a bittersweet memory for the family of Timmy Howard.
A positive, upbeat, kind, quiet soul.
He graduated from URI in May with a degree in communication studies and had a summer internship all lined up.
He was on the cusp of living his life.
Days later, after a late-night snack at home contaminated with peanuts, he was gone.
He came in and woke us up and said that he couldn't breathe. And at that point, it unfolded very quickly.
They did everything right, administering his EpiPen and calling 911, but it was too late. The Howard family is making it their mission to use his death for good.
We don't know how many times he's had it or not had it, but we just want to bring awareness to make sure everyone reads labels and, really looks at the ingredients.
Thousands of teachers in the Granite School District earn a living in one of the most expensive housing markets in Utah.
Cost of living is a real concern.
The school district is seeing fewer students, in part because young families just can't afford to buy a home. So as the district closes schools, leaders are considering turning old campuses into employee housing instead of selling the land to private developers. The district is considering a feasibility study and employee survey on the issue. This at a time when Superintendent Ben Horsley says most new teachers are coming in from out of state.
You're trying to get every advantage you can to attract and retain the highest quality educators you can.
Coming up, federal health officials taking a new look at infant formula, the massive review just ordered. And a fast food fan favorite makes its long-awaited return, the new item hitting McDonald's menus next month. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now, future Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers is taking his challenge to Pittsburgh. The Steelers and Rodgers agreeing to a one-year deal pending physical. And McDonald's announces the return of the snack wrap. So popular, the fan favorite item will be back on menus July 10th after its 9-year hiatus. And Tom Felton is reprising his role as the villain Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. The actor is set to join the cast starting November 11th and run through March 22nd. And those stories and much more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Amazon is now expanding its AI footprint with a new multi-billion-dollar data hub in North Carolina. But as of right now, there's no set deadline for the opening. The investment will expand the company's artificial intelligence infrastructure and cloud computing technology. At least 500 jobs will be created. The state's governor says this is one of the largest financial investments in North Carolina's history. A recall alert, Ford is recalling more than 550,000 vehicles due to airbag and structural issues that could increase the risk of a crash or injury. This recall, we've got it pulled up here, covers model years 2016, 17, and 2025. More than 63,000 Ford Mavericks may not signal whether the passenger airbag is off, and 492,000 Ford Explorers are at risk of the door trim detaching while driving. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is having the FDA review the nutrients and ingredients in baby formula. The project, called Operation Stork Speed, is the first deep look at the ingredients since 1998. The review will include increased testing for heavy metals to see if any ingredients need to be added, removed, or changed. Scientists say the review is long overdue as regulations are way behind international standards. The process is expected to take at least a year. Still to come, a Florida sheriff is arrested in a Homeland Security sting operation. The illegal criminal enterprise netting him and his cohorts millions of dollars, according to authorities. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back. The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
We want to know who told them to do what and when.
Major escalation. The current president launches an investigation into the former one. The allegations of a cover-up that has leaders on Capitol Hill sounding the alarm.
Who do you blame for this?
I wouldn't know, sir. I think it's a pervasive thing across the DOD.
Waste Watch intensifies on Capitol Hill. The billions now in question swirling from the Pentagon. Plus a massive diesel spill in the heart of Baltimore. The incident now traced back to a local hospital. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and House Oversight Chair James Comer has subpoenaed former President Joe Biden's White House physician to appear in a deposition later this month. And President Donald Trump is launching an official investigation into President Biden's use of the auto pen. As Christine Frizzell reports, he's now gotten his Attorney General involved.
The Department of Justice, just the latest entity to be launching an investigation into President Joe Biden's final months in the White House.
I know some of the people that use that auto pen, and those are not the people that had the same ideology as Joe Biden. These were radical left lunatics that used that, and they didn't get elected.
Trump focusing in part on presidential pardons Biden signed, including for family members, and the sentences he commuted of prisoners on death row. On Wednesday, issuing this memo asking the DOJ to investigate, quote, whether certain individuals conspired to deceive the public about Biden's mental state. At the same time, Republicans on the House Oversight Committee are ramping up their own investigation into the matter, following the release of this book by journalists Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson.
We want to know who told them to do what and when. We want to know that Joe Biden actually gave the authority to do that Joe Biden was cognitively aware of what he was doing.
His committee now expanding its investigation with demands Biden's doctor, Kevin O'Connor, answer questions. Also now calling former Chief of Staff Ron Klain and other Biden officials Anita Dunn, Bruce Reed, and Steve Ricchetti. Former President Biden now responding in a statement writing, "Let me be clear. I made the decisions during my presidency. I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, and proclamations. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false." For years now, Republicans have accused the Justice Department of being weaponized against them and Donald Trump. Now critics say Trump is weaponizing it himself, even using the DOJ as his personal law firm.
The idea of focusing on President Biden is a way of distracting from Donald Trump's efforts to completely undermine our democracy, to grift and engage in corruption.
Even though he left office months ago, Joe Biden once again a major target for Republicans on Capitol Hill. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
President Trump held a long-awaited phone call with China's President Xi Jinping Thursday. The president says his conversation with Xi had a very positive conclusion. Trump says U.S. and Chinese officials will be meeting shortly to hold trade talks in hopes of ending a brewing trade war. Xi also extended an invitation to Trump and the First Lady to visit China, while Trump invited Xi and his wife to Washington. The Supreme Court unanimously sides with an Ohio woman who filed a reverse discrimination lawsuit against her employer. Marlene Ames worked for the Ohio Department of Youth Services for 20 years. She claims she was passed over for a promotion and demoted because she's straight, stating in both instances the opportunities were given to LGBTQ+ people. The High Court's decision impacts lawsuits in 20 states and the District of Columbia. A federal judge could unseal FBI surveillance records of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. That's after the Justice Department asked that the records be released 2 years before its scheduled release. The judge says he'll review an inventory of the records himself. President Trump signed an executive order to begin the process in January. King's relatives want the documents to remain in the National Archives. It's been 2 weeks since the anti-Semitic attack that killed Israeli embassy staffers Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram in Washington, D.C. Milgram's family now sharing the devastation of losing their daughter with CBS News.
Usually a parent tries to mold their child. Sarah molded us. She was a stronger person than I ever was. I told Nancy after this happened that I'm a different person now than before this happened.
Her parents went on to say they are planning a trip to Israel this fall to meet with Lishinsky's family and visit his grave. Lishinsky and Milgram were gunned down outside the Capitol Jewish Museum as they were leaving a diplomatic event discussing how to get more aid into Gaza. Florida Sheriff Marcos Lopez is now being accused of running an illegal gambling operation. That's according to Homeland Security investigators. The agency says Lopez and others generated nearly $22 million in illicit proceeds. Lopez is charged with racketeering and conspiracy to commit racketeering. The investigation is ongoing. This week, Canada unveiled sweeping new legislation aimed at strengthening its border and protections. And we are learning this bill, dubbed the Strong Borders Act, would give increased powers to Canada's security and intelligence services, expand the ability to open and inspect mail, and allow officials to cancel or suspend immigration documents. Lawmakers say the bill will keep Canadians safe as the country ramps up its efforts to stop organized crime activity from foreign nationals.
With this new legislation, we'll ensure Canada has the right tools to keep our borders secure, combat transnational organized crime and fentanyl, and disrupt illicit financing.
Lawmakers say the legislation was drafted to contain elements to strengthen the relationship between Canada and the U.S. In January, President Trump declared a national emergency and imposed tariffs on Canada due to the flow of migrants and fentanyl into the United States. Military spending is under heavy scrutiny on Capitol Hill. Reports show billions of confirmed fraud. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joining us from Washington with this week's Waste Watch report.
Defense spending is the largest part of the federal budget, $893 billion for fiscal year 2025, yet the Pentagon cannot say where exactly all those taxpayer dollars are going.
Who do you blame for this?
I wouldn't know, sir. I think it's a pervasive thing across the DOD.
A House Oversight Subcommittee held a hearing Wednesday on Capitol Hill to unpack the problems. From 2017 to 2024, DOD reported about $10.8 billion of confirmed fraud.
Fraud harms military readiness. It puts service members at risk and erodes the trust of the American taxpayers.
This bipartisan effort aims to understand why DOD has failed every single audit since 2018.
All of this comes against a backdrop of 7 straight failed audits by the Department of Defense, which is really hard to fathom.
Back in February, President Trump confirmed he instructed the Department of Government Efficiency to take a hard look at military spending.
We're going to go through everything just as it was so bad. Sadly, you'll find some things that are pretty bad.
Predicting in a Fox News interview there would be billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse to find there.
Go to the military. Let's check the military. We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse, but I campaigned on this.
These issues at DOD are far from news. An announcement last October revealed the defense contractor Raytheon would pay nearly $1 billion to settle accusations it defrauded the Department of Defense through overinflating expenses and paid bribes to Qatar to secure business deals with the Gulf state. Initial DOJ findings show $80 million of wasteful spending at DOD. A memo published last week from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said DOJ will now have the opportunity to review all unclassified contracts. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Happening now in Baltimore, crews are working to contain a massive diesel fuel spill in the city's harbor. City officials say the leak of more than 2,000 gallons came from the Johns Hopkins Hospital pipeline, but an investigation is underway to determine the exact cause.
We have no evidence to suggest there is any impact on drinking water in the area. Now, despite that, I do want to be clear that we still have work to do.
The spill was first reported Wednesday morning. The governor's office says Johns Hopkins is working with agencies at the site. The legality of some of former President Joe Biden's pardons and other documents signed with an AutoPad is being called into question. Republicans claim Biden may not have even known the AutoPad was being used. Meanwhile, President Trump is also making headlines for his own list of controversial pardons over the last few weeks. The Fact Check team's Janae Bowens is joining us to discuss. So this list includes some big names. Yeah. Break that down for us.
Yeah, Didi, so President Trump has granted clemency to more than 1,500 people since the start of his second term, including people convicted of crimes connected to the January 6th Capitol riot. Now, his most recent pardons include reality TV stars Todd and Julie Chrisley, who were convicted of defrauding community banks for over $36 million.
Those pardons, as you know, have been criticized, much like Biden for pardoning his son Hunter. Yeah. Just take a moment and give us a brief history. Why, when were presidential pardons? How did they come to be?
Right. So the power for a president to grant pardons was actually written into the Constitution and adopted in 1787 in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1. Also known as the Pardon Clause. Now, our founding fathers modeled this after the British's way of doing things, which allowed kings to grant mercy as a tool of justice and reconciliation.
Janae, thank you. And for more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to their sources, all of Janae's research, just scan that QR code or visit thenationaldesk.com. So to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from the latest on the travel ban to the alleged cover-up of President Biden's mental acuity.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. President Trump instituting a travel ban on foreign nationals from a dozen countries he says are potential threats to U.S. national security. Critics say this is a rerun of his controversial so-called Muslim ban from his first term. National correspondent Matt Galka, you've been covering this story. Why is the president doing this now, and where do things go from here?
Yeah, Steve, it's not just a rerun of that policy from the first term. It's actually a pretty big expansion. From the first term, it was 7 Muslim-majority countries. That policy wound up in front of the courts multiple times, and it was ultimately reversed during the Biden administration. Now we're at 12 countries, mostly the Middle East and in Africa. Countries, Afghanistan is on that list. Iran is on that list. There are 7 more countries in this new ban that will have partial restrictions. That includes Cuba and Haiti. And you asked, why is he doing it now? Well, when the president announced this new travel ban, he talked about the terror attack we saw in Boulder, Colorado, on the group of Jewish people who were peacefully protesting, the hostages still in Gaza. That was carried out. The suspect there, an Egyptian national who overstayed a visa, and the president highlighted some of the concerns that happen and some of the potential dangers that happen when people overstay visas. Although Egypt is not on the list, and the president was asked about that this past week.
Egypt has been a country that we deal with very closely. They have things under control. The countries that we have don't have things under control. And why now? I can say that it can't come soon enough, frankly. We want to keep bad people out of our country.
Now, critics on this one believe this will ultimately have to be decided by the courts again. But in a more real-world sense, if this policy does go through, it actually could have a pretty big impact on some major sporting events coming to the U.S., including the World Cup next year. Iran, a country on that travel ban list, has already qualified for the World Cup. There is an exemption in this executive order that will allow athletes and coaches to travel and compete in sporting competitions. The World Cup was on the list, an Olympic exemption also. But as far as fans go from Iran, if this ban goes through, they would not be allowed.
This is another Trump policy. Likely we'll see it in court. National correspondent Matt Galka, thanks. Meanwhile, investigations into former President Biden's health and as President Trump put it, Biden's, quote, cognitive decline are ramping up. National correspondent Christine Frizzell, President Trump this past week asking the Justice Department to get involved. What's going on there?
Yeah, this all stems, I guess you could take a further look back and say it stems from that debate between President Trump and former President Biden. A lot of people now refer to it as the disastrous debate. It was very clear to the millions of people watching that something wasn't right, that Biden was forgetful, losing his train of thought. And, that debate eventually led him to drop out of the presidential race. Well, fast forward, a book is written, hundreds of people are spoken to, and the book alleges, it's written by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, two journalists. It basically alleges that, in fact, President Biden has been declining in his mental and physical health, and that a lot of people covered it up. So those are the allegations in the book. Now we see Republicans going crazy in Washington. They have launched an investigation, and now Trump is adding to that as well. We've been hearing a lot, though, from Chairman of the Oversight Committee, James Comer, about what that investigation now entails and also why it's recently expanded.
I think there's a little bit of curiosity now as to who was actually running the country. We're starting with these staffers that we know were the ones who manually put the documents in the auto pen and pressed the power button to sign Joe Biden's signature.
You heard that word auto pen. This is something a lot of people never thought about before. This is the pen that's used, sometimes an automatic one used by many presidents in the past to sign executive orders, documents, all kinds of things. Well, they want to ask who was actually holding the pen and what was it used for. So you have this investigation going on. And now this past week on Wednesday evening, President Trump issued a memo asking his Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Justice Department to investigate all of these things. They want to know if there was a cover-up. They want to know exactly what documents were signed by President Biden and which ones were not. He's particularly interested in what he says, 1,200 documents, 235 judges were appointed during a certain time. Also, pardons that Biden signed for members of his family and others, and also the sentences of death row prisoners that he commuted.
We'll be paying a lot of attention, I'm sure, to the last president by this president. There'll be a lot to watch over the coming months. Christine, Matt, as always, thank you both for your hard work. Back to you.
New information now. The Trump administration says it is revoking guidance requiring hospitals to provide emergency abortions. The guidance was issued in 2022, weeks after Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court. It was an effort by the Biden administration to give legal assurances about what qualifies as an emergency under state abortion bans. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services said this week it will continue to enforce a federal law requiring emergency rooms to perform necessary care for anyone. Former President Joe Biden's press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, says she's no longer a Democrat. According to her soon-to-be released book, she's now an independent. She served as the Biden-era's top spokesperson for more than 2 years. She also worked for the Biden-Harris 2020 campaign and the Obama administration. The book will be released in October. Get this, there were almost 17 million vehicles on the road in the United States with expired tags at the start of the year, according to new Carfax data. Texas, New York, California, and Pennsylvania coming in with the most expired tags, as you see there on your map. The average lag for most drivers with expired tags was about 4 months. Don't forget, having expired tags can lead to costly fines if you're pulled over. U.S. job openings increased in April, surpassing expectations. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, employers posted nearly 7.4 million job vacancies at the end of April. That's up from 7.2 million in March. It suggests the labor market is holding steady despite some economic uncertainty caused in part by President Trump's tariffs. The Labor Department released its jobs report for May on Friday. Early indications are the labor market is holding steady, with employers adding 139,000 jobs. Coming up next here on the National News Desk, these steps being taken to stop Americans from unknowingly participating in an illegal wildlife trade. Then, the unprecedented investment the state of Texas is making in schools and teachers. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America. And we start in Texas, where public schools are getting billions of dollars in new funding.
Texas should be #1 in educating our children.
An $8.5 billion investment in public education, including $4 billion for teacher and staff pay raises, is now law of the land. That's the most ever in Texas history, and it could be impacting schools as soon as next school year.
The fact that this teacher allotment for compensation is not just a bonus or a stipend, it's for the first time ever permanent.
It's arguably the biggest bill of the 89th session, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. Governor Abbott has already signed SB 2 into law, creating a private school vouchers program in the state.
This bill would restrict the sale of wildlife, of imperiled species that are coming into the state, and Pennsylvanians who are unknowingly making these purchases so that they're not contributing to the wildlife trade by unknowingly doing so.
A deep dive investigation into ivory sales across the Commonwealth is now helping lawmakers attempt to pass a new bill. The Humane World for Animals says it found nearly 400 items identified as ivory being sold across the Commonwealth.
We've done ivory investigations. We've done maybe about 7 or 10 of them over the last several years, and we find a lot of ivory in this country.
Jaden Neal on his family's farm here in Albion might be well on his way to changing the cow milking process. He says the current method of milking has some issues.
The existing tools have brushes and belts or are in contact with the cows, and that can cause some contamination issues or cross-contamination issues, and it's also just rougher on the cows.
He's made a device called the Vortex. It's 3D printed, light in weight, and is an udder washing device focused on sterilization. It also has improved grip and nozzle heads. Jaden put his new bachelor's degree from the Rochester Institute of Technology to work. Jaden's business is appropriately called Udder Ways, and the plan is to bring this tool out of the family farm in Albion.
Innovative idea. Still ahead here, a hiring freeze for the National Weather Service comes to an end. Why the new mandate may have come too late. And caught on camera, the Yellowstone explosion officials say only happened a few times a year. The National Weather Service earlier this year lost more than 500 employees to layoffs and early retirement packages. Now, sources say the agency has permission to hire about 125 new meteorologists and specialists. This all comes amid concerns neither the NWS nor the Federal Emergency Management Agency are prepared for hurricane season. About half a dozen forecast centers have had to cut back on employee hours or overnight staffing during times of non-threatening weather. Caught on camera, rushing water and debris shooting into the air right there after an eruption at Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. A new webcam tracking activity at the Black Diamond Pool captured that incident just weeks after installation. The U.S. Geological Survey says the pool is the same site of a larger hydrothermal explosion last summer. That's when water suddenly turns to steam underground. And it turns out the Milky Way may not ever collide with a neighboring galaxy, as past theories predicted. Now, a study published in Nature Astronomy says proclaiming the demise of the Milky Way is a bit exaggerated. Astronomers report the chances of the two spiral galaxies colliding is just a 50-50 shot within the next 10 billion years. That's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on the nationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.